Okay, and now for just a couple lectures as the back bookend of our Intro to Wine course on actually storing wine and serving wine in your home, but also building your cellar and buying wine and the smartest tips for buying wine, both in the store and online. Nice closing off of our course here. And I've been asked to use my inside voice. That's why I'm a little calmer than usual, because I am here in my home, or if it gets too loud, I'll be knocking walls down. So, most of the wine you're going to have once you get into wine is probably going to be in your home, hopefully with your late lunches and early dinners and dinner company you have over. And there are a few tips I can give you. Again, most of this information I'm transmitting is based off of questions I've had from over a decade of students saying, well, how do I do this and how do I do this? And I see common themes come up. So a lot of folks always ask me, well, how long do wines keep? How do I keep them overnight? How do I keep them for longer? How do I age wines that are supposed to age for 5 or 10 years? So let's talk about some of those things here in the home where that's going to be happening. When it comes to your average white wine and average red wine, as we've already expressed perhaps multiple times throughout this intro course, most of these things are crafted for immediate consumption. So we're not really looking at long-term storage of hardly any whites and very few reds. And as an intro drinker, you're probably not buying things yet that need to be aged out for 5 or 10 years. However, you do need to consider that even wines that are going to be consumed now, tomorrow or the next day, or next week, or next month, you do need to store them properly within your home so that you get the best out of them. It is entirely possible to help a wine go bad before you get to it in your own house, even if you drink it within a month or two. And you'll find as you get into wines and you go to your local wine store and start tasting 5 or 10 wines at a time, and they offer a discount if you buy a case, you're going to want to buy a case or 2 or 3. So how do we make sure these wines get to your palate in the best shape possible? We'll start with the shortest term and then work our way into longer term storage. For the short term, everybody always asks me, well, I didn't get into wine because I can't drink a whole bottle of wine in one sitting and then it's going to go bad. And so therefore I don't drink. I don't even know how many people I've even given this lecture to who still have this mythology in their head that I can't drink because I can't drink a whole bottle and therefore I don't want to waste it, so therefore I don't drink it all. Dudes, dudettes, there are many other sizes of wine. We've already talked about this. So you can buy a split, or I'm sorry, the splits all the way. You can buy half bottle splits, and those are increasingly becoming available. And that's a nice, a half bottle is about what an adult can handle at a nice dinner. So if you just want to do a single bottle, buy the half bottle splits. But the thing is, save those half bottle and split empty bottles, because the wines can be stored overnight, possibly for 2 to 3 days. So don't ever not open a bottle because you feel like you have to drink it all or nothing in one sitting. That's preposterous. For starters, if you want to open a bottle and you say, well, I can't drink it all. My wife or husband doesn't drink, and so I can't drink a whole bottle, and I recommend not. Don't make yourself drink a whole bottle. I do it because I'm a professional. But if you have a bottle open, you can easily overnight it. The quality wines that are being produced, even in general, kind of mediocre general wines, they'll last overnight on the counter or in the refrigerator. And so once you open certain bottles, if it's a screw cap, put the screw cap back on and stick it on your kitchen counter, out of light, away from heat, or even stick it in the refrigerator. Just putting the cap back on, putting the cork back. If it's a cork wine that you pulled out, flip the cork over and just stick it back in and try to apply some pressure to get it back in there, and then put the reds or whites in the fridge. Simply putting the cap back on it helps make it last this much more. Putting it in the fridge makes it last this much more as well. But there are many other devices you can use. You can find lots of fancy top things you can stick in there, and just keep it on the kitchen counter. Here's a fancier one. But again, the standard cork works just fine. The Zonk, we pointed out in earlier lectures, awesome because it'll fit just about any bottle. And it makes things really airtight really quick. So those are nice devices. Again, if the screw cap's there, put that back on. However, the reason that we do all of these things is to stop oxygen from getting back into the bottle. Oxygen is what doesn't make it go bad, although wines can get what we call oxidized, but allowing oxygen in allows bacteria that eat alcohol and are aerobic to start going to work. So these bacteria are everywhere. You can't help it. They're just all over the place, as are many microbiological things. So they're already in the wine, but when the wine is full and it's capped, no oxygen can get in, so they can't breathe and live. Once we've opened up the bottle, we've introduced oxygen, and it's like, okay, now these things can go to work. But they don't work quite that fast. So again, you cap it back up, cork it up, put it in the fridge. Virtually every white wine will go 1 or 2 days. Virtually every red wine will go 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days. And you should actually experiment with this. And what I really want you to do is challenge the wine. If it's really well crafted, put the cap back on it, stick it on the counter, and it may go another week. It actually may get better. So actually do experiments with wines and drink 1 glass one night, cap it back up, drink 1 glass the next night, and compare notes. Leave a third of it, and the third night, drink the last part and compare notes. Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? This is really good for learning how wine dynamics work and also being able to identify quality wines. If it's still really good after 3, 4, 5, 6 days, that's a well-crafted wine. There are ways we can actually help this process too, and there's tons of devices that help with this. Lots of trinkets. I actually don't recommend buying lots of trinkets, but if you feel the need for wine trinkets, there are many on the market, including one that I don't even have, which is called like a vacuum pump. And it looks like you put a zonk on it, right? And it's some sort of bizarre cork device, and then there's a pump that you physically are going to pump the oxygen out and create a vacuum in it. I think those work about that much, so I'm not really sure that it's worth the investment, although lots of people buy them. One that is, again, you're trying to take the oxygen out of the bottle so that the bacteria can't go to work and make it go bad. The other thing is gas. Isn't this nitrogen? Isn't this NO2, I believe, or N2? It's nitrogen and gas, and you actually, with a little straw, you just stick it in there and just blast it. And the nitrogen gas is heavier than oxygen, so it essentially displaces it. So it pushes the oxygen out, and then you put the cap on. Hey, it's like you have a brand new bottle again. So that's another way to push air out, make sure oxygen is not in there in contact with the wine, which makes it go bad. This device is brand new, and I love this. I love these new things they're coming out with. I just saw this. It's a pouch. It's a reusable wine pouch. You actually uncork this thing and you pour, it'll hold a whole bottle of wine in here. It's essentially like a boxed wine that you can do yourself at home. So you could pour in a half bottle, or actually pour in a whole bottle, and then you pour out as you are using it and cap it back up. Push the air out before you cap it back up. So you're allowing no oxygen and actually no light penetration in here either. Maybe I should have pointed that out from the get-go. A couple of ways you can really destroy wine are oxygen getting in there, and those bacteria go to work, eat the alcohol, and then release all sorts of nastiness, and it's called an oxidized wine. Just as it's past. It's obvious once you have that stewed, pruny, over the hill, nasty smell in all wines. They'll all oxidize kind of the same way and create the same flavors. And it's vinegar. It's actually called acetic acid bacteria that eat alcohol and create acetic acid, which is vinegar. And so I have a vinegary, pruny, done smell. That means that the wine's been too oxygenated and it's past. It's spoiled. Some people use it for cooking. I don't. I use it for cleaning out a toilet bowl. Why would you use nasty old wine for cooking? I mean, would you get the crappiest steak to put into a great beef stew? I don't think so. So quality in, quality out. Don't ever use past nasty old wine for cooking. It doesn't make any sense. The other thing that can destroy wine is light, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but light penetrating the bottle can actually destroy things chemically, so you don't want to store things in the light. But back to the pouch, all of these things again are displacing the oxygen, pushing the oxygen away from the fluid so that it lasts longer. Cool? All right.
Great for travel and hiking.
Oh, yeah, so thanks, Katie. I didn't even mention the coolest thing, even with a handle. I mean, they're coming out with such cool devices now. So a little handle for hiking, biking, smuggling into the football game. I mean, it's just a really great little device. I can't believe someone hadn't thought of that earlier. That's awesome. I like that much better than I like even this, which I like much better than the vacuum pump. Again, I think you're looking at increasing levels of just buying trinkets to have trinkets, because if you just put a cap back on it, it'll last till tomorrow. It'll probably last to the next day as well, with some exceptions. Red generally will last longer than white because it has more tannins, more colors, more alcohol, and all these things help it last a little longer. So reds will last a little longer in general than whites, and sparkling will not last at all. This is one that I say, if you're going to open it, you drink it. Because sparkling wines, by their very nature, are charged with CO2. As soon as you release the cap on this, the CO2 is starting to escape, and it's starting to go flat instantaneously, and it will be flat within hours. There are devices you can get that actually will increase the pressure. They're kind of like a Zonk, but with clamps around it to clamp on there to hold the CO2 in. This is for celebration, all right? This is for palate cleansing, pre-meal, during meal, post-meal. You finish it. And again, it doesn't have to be champagne with every meal. Decent sparkling wines are going for more and more reasonable rates. But if you're going to open it, just go ahead and finish it. Have more than 2 or 3 people there to help make sure you finish that bottle. It's just more trouble than it's worth trying to overnight store sparkling wines. So there is one other way that I actually highly recommend if you truly want to get into wines, and it involves hardly any of these trinkets, and it's almost 100% foolproof. It's kind of based on the same logic of this bag. That is, you're going to try to make sure there is no air near it, even if it's a half a bottle or a quarter of a bottle or an eighth of a bottle. And that way is actually rebottling. What? You can do that? Sure. You can save your old half bottles, some of which are screw cap, most of which are cork. Save your old bottles of half bottle wine, or save up old beer bottles. And with the half splits or half bottles, you can recork with the cork itself or through with a Zonk. If you use old beer bottles, which you clean out well, of course, you actually have to buy a capper. Now these things run, back in the day they were like, I don't know, like 15 or 16 bucks. They're probably up to 20. It's a bottle capper. They actually operate really easy. And if you have some old beer bottles, some nice beer bottles, or even some just bottles of any sort, it doesn't have to be beer or wine. Any bottle that's smaller than the standard 750 can be used for rebottling. And what you want to do is, with it's a half bottle or a beer bottle, is just, y'all like, I got a half bottle left. Oh, cool, this is a half bottle. Pour it in. You can use a funnel if you want to, but the more you drink, the more you'll get skills, and just mad skills of pouring, being able to do it, and people are amazed and wowed. But what you want to do is fill it completely up. Whatever the size bottle you have, whether it's a split or a half or beer bottles or unique bottles, you really want to fill it all the way to the absolute brim. Again, if it's a beer bottle, you can buy bottle caps. They cost virtually nothing. You can probably get like 200 for 10 bucks. And just cap it up, and then one of these capping devices is pretty simple. You just stick it down there and boom, and it caps it. And what you have here is during a wine tasting at wine stores where they open up 10 or 20 or 30 bottles sometimes, they want to save those wines, and they don't necessarily want to gas them all. They're not going to put them in pouches, but bottles are cheap and bottle caps are cheap. And they just fill them up, again, as much of the top as possible, because you want to make sure that there's no oxygen left in there. Put your cap on, or again, put your cork in, whatever you want to do, and then put a little sticker on it and label it, or put a sticker on the side, but put a sticker on the top or the cap or the cork, and that way you like, oh, that's what that wine was, cool. And instead of putting it on the side, you put it on the top, so when you pop the top to finish your wine the next day or the next week, or in this case, you could wait another month or two. I mean, there's no oxygen in there. It's not going to go bad. But once you do finish the wine eventually, he's like, oh, that's what that wine was, cool. Pop the top off and throw it away. That way you don't have all the stickers stuck on the side. Those are, again, just some basic tips for saving wine overnight. Putting them in the fridge, again, decreases microbiological activity because it's chillier. So that will help a little bit too, but I actually just kind of put things on the counter. Whites I'll generally put back in the fridge because you want to serve them chilled anyway. Reds I just stick on the counter. I usually like to, without doing any of these devices, I just like to put it back up there and say, okay, let's see what happens. Let's see how this thing evolves in 24 hours with some oxygen in there. Let's see how it evolves in 48 hours with oxygen in there. Maybe if it's a not so good crafted wine, maybe it's going to suck tomorrow. But I found even mediocre wines, they're starting to be okay, lasting 2 or 3 days on the counter and possibly even getting better. So challenge it, push it. That's storing wine overnight. Now, what if we have some wines that, oh, I bought 2 or 3 or 5 or 12 bottles, and I'm going to be using 1 or 2 bottles a day? That'd be awesome. Let's say 2 or 3 bottles a week. Where should I put those at, John, to make sure that they don't go bad? I'm glad you asked. And for that now, I'm going to walk around my own house and show you do's and don'ts of where to store wine for this weekly consumption, and also wines that maybe we're going to store for 2 or 3 months or even 2 or 3 years. The best places in your house to store for short-term and long-term storage. Okay, for some general do's and don'ts about where to put your wine, there are 2 major considerations. Maybe 3, but 2 major considerations of where to put your bottle of wine before you open it. We're not talking about serving temps or anything like that. We're saying, hey, I'm going to have this wine for a day or 2 or a week or 2 or a month or 2 or 5 years. Where should we put our wine? The 2 things to consider are that you never, ever, ever want to put it near or in direct sunlight. Artificial light even is not fantastic if it's a light that's on 24/7, but never near real sunlight, never near a window, never in a window sill. Big no-no. Light can chemically destroy a wine just by going through the glass. This is actually true with beer. If you ever had a skunky beer, that's beer that's been light struck, and the light actually changes the chemical dynamic of the hop in the beer and makes it smell skunky. But it actually can destroy wines too. In that same light, pun intended, never buy wine in a wine store that's sitting in the windowsill or that's being light struck. And I've been in wine stores, good wine stores that should know better, where their whole front row of wine is getting direct sunlight 8 hours a day from sun coming in through the big glass windows. And it's like, whoa, don't buy those bottles. They're getting what we call cooked, truly cooked, chemically changing the dynamics into not such pleasant flavors. So light, big no-no, stay away from light. The other one is heat. And it's not the kind of heat that you're thinking of. A lot of folks think, oh, well, I have to have a cellar to age my wines. I need an underground vault if I'm going to be a professional wine drinker. Hell no. This is all about drinking this now. It's like the title of the book. Drink this now. Let's do this now. You don't have to have 100 cases of wine in a vault with iron gates in it in your basement. That's preposterous. Not many of us can afford it. Not many of us want to do it. But there are some tips to storing, and they're all heat related. So it's actually not that you just need cold temperatures. They're nice. If you can get into a cool area to store your wine, by the way, not the refrigerator, that's awesome. But it's actually not so much about the actual temperature, it's about temperature stability. What do I mean by that? You don't ever want to put your wines in a place where it gets really, really warm and then really, really cool, and then really, really warm and then really, really cool. That actually can cook and destroy a wine in fairly short order too. So think about that whenever you're putting your wines anywhere in the house. Again, wines you just pulled in from the grocery store that you're going to drink this week, wines that you just pulled in you're going to drink a month from now. Where in your house, your domicile, are the most temperature stable places, and where in your house are the most light free zones. Think about temperature stability over all those things. Again, it's nice to put it in a place that's perhaps more chill, more cool, because this allows the wine to relax, chill out, and evolve slowly, and that's always nice. But it's not mandatory. You don't have to have a certain temperature. A lot of folks say, well, I don't have a cellar or a basement, so I'm going to put all my wine into the refrigerator. And it's like, that's actually a little too cold. That's making the wine perhaps not evolve as well as it should. So the best temperature situation is actually as natural as possible, because wine's a natural product. And that is, 10 feet underground. That's why we have wine cellars, because underneath the earth's top soil layer, as soon as you go down 10 feet, the temperatures are very stable. It's like, 55 or 60 degrees in wintertime. It's 55 or 60 degrees in summertime. That's why basements are cool, naturally cool. So if you have a lower area in your house, you could start there. But now let's just walk around this particular house, and I'll point out places that you should never put your wine and places that you should. For instance, on the windowsill? No, never. It's getting double down, light struck, and of course it's hot in the windowsill during the day. Sun goes down, then it gets cold. Double whammy, light and temperature fluctuations. Not near the window. An interior space? Yes. For wines this week, on the kitchen counter, as long as it's not near light and not near heat, you're good to go. If you're going to do it this week, it's going to be fine for a few days. Except not an interior space in the kitchen, right next to the stove, or next to the toaster oven, or even in between. Well, there's no light here. Yes, but both these devices transmit heat, fluctuating greatly heat, so not near major appliances whose job it is to heat. You can store your wines in a refrigerator for a few days before you're going to drink them, although I don't advise it. I usually say store it on the counter and then chill for a couple hours before in terms of white wine. But here's one big no-no you never want to do, and this is a very popular way to store wine. People have this beautiful little wine holder they stick right on top of their fridge because it's so convenient. No! Why is this a terrible idea? Okay, well, there's no light around except the artificial. What does a refrigerator do? It chills stuff down inside. Oh, how does it do that? It pushes hot air out the back. This is perhaps one of the worst places to put wine in your house because every time the refrigerator turns on and chills, it's pushing hot air out the back, which floats up the back of the unit and pushes it out right behind your wine. Then it turns off and everything chills down again. Then the refrigerator turns back on, hot air vent, raises the temperature back up. This is worst case scenario for temperature fluctuations. Never put it on top of your refrigerator. Okay, those are the ways you store the handful of bottles that you're going to be drinking pretty soon. This week, next week, on the counter, away from heat, away from light. Got it. But what if you buy a whole case? What if you end up buying few cases, and you get really happy at the wine store? Where are the best places, short of building a whole wine cellar, which you're not going to do yet, where are the best places in the house to store those longer term? Same general principles apply. Away from fluctuations of heat and away from light. And some of the best places in even the average home or apartment are interior walls. If you do not have a basement at all, find a closet that's not near any equipment, not near any ventilation, not near any water heaters, not near anything, that's pretty stable, pretty consistent temperature at all given times, and of course no light. A standard closet, even under your bed, if that's the best thing you got, it's all about stability and getting away from light. But if you do have a basement, there are a couple other things we should probably point out. So let's go into the basement because, as we've pointed out, when we start to go lower down underneath the ground, temperatures start to get cooler naturally, which is why the basement's always the coldest room in your house, and they're much more stable. So when we're getting into the basement, there's a few other things to consider, and that is that this particular house that I'm in actually has, it's one side of the house is underground completely, the front of the house is subterranean, but it's an exposed back. That makes it a little trickier. You're going to have to think a little deeper here. What's the best place in a setup like this? Up against the wall that has dirt on the other side of it. So even though we're in the basement here, and it is chillier, you feel a noticeable degree of chill already just walking down steps of a two-story home. You want to be away from light and away from an exterior wall, because even though this is climate controlled, the exterior wall of this basement, because it's exposed, will naturally, week to week, day to day, week to week, and month to month, will have fluctuations from spring to summer to winter to fall, and that's going to affect the wine, albeit less since we're in a climate controlled environment. But given the option, put it up against a fully buried wall. And that goes for really anything. The only other thing I would consider is that this particular basement also has a section of it that has no climate control whatever. So no vents, no anything. And they would think that, oh, cool, that's subterranean, really like a true basement. It's true, but in the climate I'm in, it actually gets really, 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 really cold in the wintertime at certain points. And that unconditioned space is probably going to get too cold. And even though overall it's cooler during the year, that's still incorporating a degree of temperature fluctuation that I'm not comfortable with. So I can actually show you these things. As we go through the house, sorry for the backlight right here, I would put everything up against that wall because again you see that this is exposed a wall over here, temperature fluctuations. And I did want to point out one other thing, and that is even though we're in the basement, and even though this side of me is climate controlled and up against earth, and that's the exposed wall, there is one other place on your house, much like a refrigerator, that gets way, way, way too excessive. And that is in terms of temperature fluctuation. And that is, don't ever, even if you're in a basement, even if you're in a cellar, even if you have all these great advantages, don't ever put your wine case stacked near a water heater, or your ventilation, or your air pump stuff. These things create heat, and they don't just create heat one way. They fluctuate wildly. And so I've been in people's houses where like, oh, I got this cellar and I put all my wine over here right next to the water heater. It's like, no, you wouldn't store your vinyl album records near this, would you? Because they'll get warped from all the heating and cooling, and wine is the same way. So stay away from these big devices whose job it is to heat and to cool. Okay, so let me cut tape here and move to where's perhaps the best place in this particular space to store. In conclusion, I am a wino. I drink a lot of wine, and I buy a lot of wine, but I go through a lot of wine pretty quickly, and believe it or not, this is my cellar. I don't have anything fancier than this. Nothing fancier than this is even needed. I've gotten to the lowest point in my house, and where the temperatures are slightly chillier throughout the entire year. I'm up against an interior wall, so away from the exterior wall where the temperature fluctuations occur most. I'm also away from all major appliances. I'm not near a stove, an oven, a refrigerator, a water heater, a washer, or a dryer. So stack the stuff up and stack it in such a way that it's accessible to you, so you can get down and mull through it to find stuff that you want. You can get fancy racks, you can get unfancy box stacks just like this. You'll find that serious wine drinkers, some of them spend the coin and make a really cool cellar that looks beautiful like something you'd see in the movies. But most of us professional drinkers, you're looking at it. Cases of stuff stacked up, usually labeled per date, so we kind of know what's where. And we can go access it easily. It don't need to get any fancier than this, and this is the way you can do it without spending a single cent of money on the devices or the setup or anything else. Spend the money on wine. That's what I want intro wine drinkers doing. So again, wherever you put the wine in the house, on a weekly basis, upstairs in your kitchen or around your dining room, or for longer term storage, wherever you are in your house, always be thinking of away from light and the most stable temperature area possible. And that's all there is to storing wine in your house.